Do y'all want me to look at you when you ask a question, probably? How do you want to do this?
Look down and pound the desk.
And I'll let, I guess, first, are we ready?
Yep.
I'm rolling.
All right. Whoever wants to go first. I guess we'll just round robin this kind of, however, I mean, usually guys just kind of popcorn. Good with that? All right. Everybody can hear me through whatever
Yeah.
mics I got on.
So concerning yesterday's commissioner meeting, you brought up the subject of the purchase of the building in Techport.
Yeah.
Owned by a former Pennsylvania senator, Triple Crown Corporation, I believe it is, John DeSantos. What's the disadvantage of buying the building? I mean, you went through it yesterday,
Yeah.
but just in specifics, has there been any more information that you've been privy to since yesterday's meeting, or?
Look, there's no information that's been added since yesterday's meeting. I think the only information is that we're moving forward with 60 days of due diligence to try to discover the cost of the actual project, what it's going to cost to build out, right? We're spending $10.4 million on the building. I think yesterday I represented multiple buildings on the market, or I brought forward multiple buildings on the market that are half that price that could potentially meet the county's needs. We also have multiple buildings, like a throw a rock and hit buildings that have, lease options from our building where we're at right now. So there's options out there. And while we've locked ourselves into, in the sense of the $400,000 commitment, I'm hopeful that we'll know all the facts of what we're getting into before we commit to close. So we missed our closing date. We got a 60-day extension on a building that, by the way, we haven't even done an appraisal for. I can't think of many people in Dauphin County that want to appraise a house before they purchase it. You probably want to know the value of it. I wasn't here when these decisions were made. All the due diligence for this particular building, it's gone back multiple years, far before my time of even deciding to run for commissioner. But I'm trying to put the pieces together now and make sure the county taxpayers get the best deal.
You brought up one of the people involved in the deal was one of the former solicitors, Fred Leidy.
Sure.
I went back and looked at our archives from 2013. It appears that this has happened before in a very similar situation. During that public meeting, Fred Leidy was brought to the table talking about why Dauphin County would purchase another building for Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
In that commissioner meeting, he did acknowledge there was an appraisal done on that building.
On
1100 Cameron Street.
Oh, well, that's a separate, we're in that building now with our CMU
Yeah,
and
CMU.
connections. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The deputy county controller also spoke during public comments about why Dauphin County was buying this building. He had grave concerns. First off, the building comes off the tax rolls. He went through the amount of money that the city would lose, the school district would lose, the county would lose, as well as the library tax. It was over $200,000. If Dauphin County would proceed of buying this building in Techport, how much money would be lost because this would be a tax exempt property?
I don't have the exact numbers, but it is.
He brought that up during public participation, and Jeff Hayes said, no pilots. And I asked him, did you consider one? He said, no.
I wasn't here in 2013 to know exactly all those details, but I will say in this particular case, obviously, what typically happens in these situations is that, conversations happen with the school district and the municipality to consider a pilot that will ensure that, their funding is not jeopardized.
Hartwick actually said that, but then he never followed through.
I'm committed to make sure that in the event that Techport does take place, that Swatera doesn't get left, figuring out how to reconcile budgets, and same with CD.
And also too, yesterday you brought up the fact, I think you brought up that you, quick Google search, you found 2 other commercial buildings that were somewhat similar for a lot less in price.
Yeah.
I just did the same thing. There's a building on Cameron Street. It's called the Old Cam Building.
That's one of the buildings I referenced yesterday.
It's listed for $4 million. It was sold 5 years ago for $20 million.
Yep.
It's completely empty. The commercial office space market is tanking.
Yep.
Why would anybody pay full price, and why would anybody pay full price without an appraisal?
You're making the public comments I made yesterday. I think a lot of people are seeing this as us losing $400,000 if we walk away from this deal. I'm seeing it as us potentially benefiting millions, given the nature of the market right now. And I also don't know that we're in the position to own such a large asset, given the fact that we have hundreds of over 100 properties that the county currently owns, that we haven't really shown, based on what I can see over the last few decades, a great track record of maintenance, maintaining those properties. Not that our maintenance team doesn't do a great job, they do well with the resources they have, but ultimately we're talking about taking on one of the largest properties that we would own, and that ownership means we're going to have a lot more to maintain.
I think it's 144,000 square feet. It's an extremely large building.
Yes.
Okay.
Last time we talked about this, you showed support for the project itself and not the way it's been executed. Do you think that's going to change with this extension in the next few months, do you think that will actually come to fruition?
I continue to show support for the vision of having our human services in one building. I think the idea of having all of our human services in one space where they can collaborate more frequently and where the user experience is better is something that is a noble effort. I think the execution has been faulty with this. Look, I'm open to new information over the next 60 days to change my perspective. I want to be someone who ultimately is working for getting the taxpayers the best deal. I think some of the things I've brought up, it's going to be challenging to see how those factors are going to change. For example, not having an appraisal. For example, the market where it currently is. Those aren't going to change in the next 60 days. But with that, if this deal ends up looking like, we've really turned a corner and there's some real good information coming across, I'll acknowledge that. And I'm not going to stand in the way of this being a success. I just want to make sure the taxpayers understand every step of the way what it's going to cost for it to be a success, when there's other options that can be just as successful, that in the case of building acquisition are half the price.
Do you have a direct message for the taxpayers who, we talked about that last time. Now the extension has been finalized.
Yeah.
Do you have a new message for the taxpayers now that there are 60 more days to get this project done, or to continue working on the project?
Keep watching what your elected officials are doing and keep asking questions. Reach out to us as elected officials, ask questions, be involved, try to be as informed as you can. And ultimately, when it comes to a large project like this, let us know what you think about investing this much money in these types of projects, because I think investing in our human services is something we need to do. I just think we need to make sure every dollar gets stretched as far as it can when we do.
Have you gotten any public comment yet?
We had some public comment yesterday in the meeting. Certainly, I've had people reach out to my office and express, their thoughts and concerns about the project. So yeah, we've had some public comment. I just think I want the voters to be engaged in understanding that, yesterday I presented a scenario where this could cost up to $35 million between the acquisition and between the fit out. We have a $40 million, so $35 million. We have a $40 million bond. That only leaves $5 million left for facility upgrades. We've earmarked more than $5 million for the prison. So someone is going to be, this money is going to be removed from other necessary work in the county, or we're going to have to get another bond. So think of a bond as a credit card. Let's open another credit card that the taxpayers are going to have to pay so that we can upgrade our facilities now that we got this over here. Now, could the long-term cost savings over 10, 20 years be there? Yes. I'm not going to say they couldn't be, but I'm going to say, given that the market is at an all-time historical low for leasing office space, it seems odd to be in the market for buying.
Can I, yesterday you brought up that were you contacted by another commercial agent about another building in Techport, or was a staff member? I'm not quite sure what happened, because George Hartwood was upset about what you had presented yesterday.
Sure. Someone in our office was contacted during Commissioner Hartwick's absence about a meeting that they had scheduled with Commissioner Hartwick to review a property for purchase for acquisition. and that Commissioner Hartwood was interested in purchasing that property. My belief is it was 3815 Techport, which is neighboring, which by the way is where our drug and alcohol currently is leasing space there.
Yes.
And so there was a conversation about acquisition and a meeting based on the email. I'm basing this just off the reach out that was made. Based on that information, there was a desire to acquire the building. That was news to myself and Commissioner Priest. Yeah, I maintain that I don't really understand why we're looking into purchasing other facilities when we haven't even done the due diligence on one that we're already under contract to have a closing date on, and not including staff or other commissioners. Where's this money coming from to purchase this other building that I think is currently listed at like 9 million?
I think it was I didn't see the
million.
listing, but I did see the sale that took place, I think in late 2023 for 8.3.
Okay, so
I didn't see the sale listing though.
Well, it might be, you might be right. It might be 8 million or something that I saw that it went for. Yeah.
But again, when you talked about there's a surplus of commercial office space,
Yes.
glut, prices are at all-time low.
Yes. Although the important thing to reference is fitting out a building is not at an all-time low, given the reality of
construction
tariffs,
costs are at all-time high.
given the reality of those challenges. Fitting out a building is going to be very challenging. And I'm thankful that we have an RCO, so it has to be responsible contractors that go in there and do that work, and we pay prevailing wage. It's not going to be cheap to fit out a building.
Right, you do have to pay prevailing wage in these, okay. Has there, any bids come in on the proposed Techport building that you wanted to buy? You're saying there's no project manager, no architect?
We received quotes from project managers and architects. This would have been 2 days before the meeting where we lapsed. I could go back and find the date, but it was like 2 days before the meeting. It was the Monday before the first meeting where we talked about Techport, where that was the first time I'd ever seen any quotes from December 18th all the way through May. So
And then you named that, 140 some days?
yeah,
from the time
142 days, I think, or something like that, or 47 days. Anyway, all that to say, we have those, and my understanding is that there's negotiations happening on them doing what was said in the meeting the other day as free work to acquire estimates, but nothing's free. So I'll be interested to see how that works. Certainly, I think we can work with partners that can, help us in like a basic understanding. But I want numbers that are accurate when it comes to what a fit out's going to cost, or have very low margin of change, which in the commercial industry, you put anywhere from 5 to 10% in change orders into your budget. Free work that gets us the information, I wonder if it's going to be able to fall within the 5 to 10% margin of change if it wasn't fully vetted. And you got to pay for full vetting. At least that's the way I look at it. So we'll see if this turns out to be a free 60-day extension, as it's been noted.
And then this building does have tenants in it.
It does.
Occupied by a charter school?
So I
Charter
think
academy or
Yeah.
something?
Yep. So look, when you're buying commercial property, it's often seen as a value added to have tenants because you're inheriting lease agreements and you have guaranteed individuals in those spaces. In this case, for us, it's not necessarily the case because we plan to use the entire building. So some of these lease agreements, we're hopeful that people will opt out when the opt-out provisions come up, but some of these lease agreements do not have, they have auto opt-ins and things of that nature to where they can stay in the building if they desire to. So even that is another questionable, thing within all this. I believe there are currently 2 occupants there, and one of them has a longer-term lease. And now we also, to be fair, there is a tiered approach to how we'll move in. Departments won't all move in at the same time. There'll be a tier here, another. As lease agreements come to an end, they'll move in. So there are some that are further back that we can hope that those tenants are going to move out. But if there were to be any tenant landlord challenges, that could really gum up the process as well. So it would be far more ideal, in my opinion, to move into a completely empty building.
Like the building on Cameron Street, Oldham, which is completely empty at this point.
Yep, or the one on Legalstown, or out in Legalstown that I referenced yesterday. There were two different buildings that I referenced.
There was
Over
another-
100,000 square feet.
There was another one that just popped up right across from the prison. And I think it was the old,
Toys R Us building.
it's Charles Bookstore, second.
Yeah, that's the old Toys R Us building.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
by the mall.
And that one is completely empty, I believe, and
It's
then-
not empty now. Now,
Okay, all right.
I think it just didn't the bookstore just move in there?
Yeah, Second and Charles is now in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the point I think in all of this is to say, I don't know that we did two due diligence things. I don't know that we did. I don't know that we did a full analysis of the entire market, right? And I don't know that we did a full analysis on the value of owning versus leasing. At least nothing that I've seen. I saw two buildings that were considered, brought to the commissioners in a packet. Now, they might have looked at other ones before that, but those are the ones that they did the deep dive on to determine whether or not they would suit our needs.
What's your prediction with the project for the next 60 days? What do you think is going to happen?
It's going to take a lot of time from our staff. That's my prediction. My prediction is whatever is free on paper is going to take a lot of our time and energy away from other priorities. Priorities like an engineering RFP, priorities like healthcare RFP, priorities like a prison healthcare RFP, priorities like multiple bargaining units that we're currently in negotiations with for next year's budget. We have a lot of priorities here right now that need attention, and we're going to spend the next 60 days. And even as my conversation with the solicitor yesterday got to, was that we are going to have multiple executive sessions on this topic, where it's going to be a consistent theme that we're going to have to be making decisions on and executing plans on. And I just continue to say, commissioners are not equipped to be commercial real estate. Like, we're not equipped to do this. Like, that's not my background. That's not any of the commissioners' background. So none of us should really be running point on this in the first place. We should hire someone to represent us that ultimately is the quarterback that knows how this works and can be the representative for the county that comes back to the commissioners and advises us on what's best. I think up to this point, that's been our real estate broker, who also represents the seller, so they're compromised. And that's where I would say I don't know that we've always got the best advice in this process.
What would you like to see going forward to prevent mismanagement of real estate deals or extra accountability tools that you'd like to see?
That's a really good question. I think, let's broaden this out beyond real estate. I would say I think one of the things that's a goal of mine in my first term is that we get a lobbying disclosure agreement in place for the county, which just means that if any entity seeking to do business with the county is working with a lobbyist to get their foot in the door for the county, that ultimately they have to disclose that, and that the lobbyist working for them has to disclose that. And so we can make that rule here in the county, and we can enforce it. That to me would create a lot of accountability across all different kinds of things, but certainly in property acquisition, as we see property acquisition in this case being a $10.4 million price tag. There's a lot of people that want to get in on that, obviously, and so it creates a lot of competition and a lot of challenge. So that's one way we can do it. And then certainly, like I just said, using professionals, using people who know the market, getting them to advocate on our behalf. Anyone else?